Morning, everyone. We're back. Day 3 of the Fitness for Duty Summit. I'm Jeremy Thiel. I'm the Senior Manager of Marketing, Ideas, and Education at DriverCheck, and I've been the host for the Fitness for Duty Summit today and for the remainder of the week. So before we get started, just some housekeeping items just to put everyone on the same page. Everyone is on mute. We're going to be taking questions at the end of the session, but you can enter your questions at any time during the actual webinar. There's a Q&A icon located at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you enter from there. If we can't get to your question today, we will be following up with comments via email next week to all the attendees. So it is a virtual event, so there may be technical difficulties, so I'll just throw out that disclaimer there. But the majority of these issues we find can be addressed by simply looking at the bottom left-hand side of your screen. There's an up arrow or a chevron icon. From there, you'll be able to adjust your proper microphone settings and adjust the volume. So all the sessions are being recorded. We're going to make them available for download sometime next week once all the dust is settled from the summit. So now, just a friendly reminder as to what the theme is for the summit this year, and it's Inspire Change. So what we want to accomplish is we want to inspire change and invoke discussions that are going to lead to a healthier and safer world. And the objective is to provide attendees with the knowledge, insight, and action items to address workplace challenges to promote a healthy and safe work environment, not only for your staff, but also the general public. And this is both from a physical and mental health perspective. So we have an awesome lineup of speakers again today. And our next speaker is Chettiar, and he's presenting Tune Into Yourself, Navigating Through Chaotic Times at Work and Home. So I've had the pleasure of sitting in on some of Harry's sessions before, and he's a phenomenal speaker, and I think it's going to resonate with all of our attendees today. So Harry's a registered psychotherapist, and he runs his own practice called Chettiar Counseling. He's also the founder of Mind Center. Now, Harry's really passionate about working collaboratively with his clients to help them discover their own path to self-transformation. He's also engaged in transforming workplace culture to promote emotional intelligence in the workplace. He's an experienced speaker who strives to connect with his audience and offers mental wellness strategies tailored to fit the corporate environment. So again, I've sat through a couple of Harry's sessions before. He's come to visit DriverCheck on numerous occasions. We thought he'd be an awesome addition to the summit this week. And when we did a poll and survey of a lot of folks, mental health was actually the most popular response as to what people want to hear about, because there are challenges. Mental health issues are on the rise, obviously, and now the pandemic has just made it explosive. So that's why I think it's really fitting that we have Harry speak today. So I'm going to see if Harry is here today.
I'm here, Jeremy. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Thanks, Harry.
I'm just going to turn on the video too.
Awesome.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. You can see me fine?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. So thanks for that introduction, Jeremy. You had a lot of good things to say about me, and I really appreciated hearing that. And the two words that stuck out for me was experienced speaker. And yes, I'm an experienced speaker, but when it comes to webinars, I'm not as experienced as I would like to be. So I'm going to have some challenges here and there. One of the main things that I strive to do, whether I'm in a session or if I'm doing a presentation, is to really connect with people. And so, of course, one of the challenges of a webinar is, I feel like I'm just talking to a camera. And fortunately, I can see you, so it's helpful for me to take a look at you. I think the last time I did a webinar, I was just speaking to the screen. Okay, so let me just a quick question, Jeremy. Do you want me to just go ahead and bring up the presentation and share the screen?
Yeah, feel free to pull up your presentation, share your screen. I'll turn off my camera, and then you'll be in all your glory.
Okay, give me one quick moment.
Looks good.
Awesome. Okay, so it's really nice to hear that there's a lot of requests for mental health information, and it is something that I'm really passionate about. And so, when I'm talking to you today, I don't want to just come from a work perspective. A lot of times I do think our work and our home, the way we are, is all interconnected. So my presentation is going to touch on aspects of work, and it's going to touch on aspects of your home life. And so, like Jeremy said, the title is Tune Into Yourself. And in this presentation, I'm going to be covering the importance of self-awareness and how that, later on you'll see how that is tied in with the importance of attachment. And so the two main things that you're going to get out of this presentation is why self-importance is really important, and how attachment can be a really powerful piece in our life. Okay, so most people know me in a professional context, as a psychotherapist, as an emotional intelligence coach, but I want you to get to know me a little bit outside of that. So in my personal life, yes, the husband, father title is there, but that's, as much as that's really important to me, I really love other things like cooking. I love nature. I'm a tech fanatic, so a lot of times I'm trying to be up to date with the latest technology. In my head, I'm really good at singing and dancing. I don't usually do it outside. I just keep it to my head. And overall, I have this view of myself that I'm an ongoing work in progress in every aspect of my life. Whether as a psychotherapist, as a coach, or as a husband, father, I'm a work in progress. Okay, so as a therapist, I've had a chance to work with, of course, a lot of different ages, genders, cultures, professions, and different circumstances. And at times, being with someone in a room, helping them in their darkest moment can be quite intimidating. And at times, when you realize that the person across you, they may be, in terms of their profession, they may be like a high level executive, or maybe it's like a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, or maybe someone who's going through really deep trauma and maybe grief. So there are a lot of different circumstances that I've had to be in with supporting people in my practice. And early on, I remember that being quite a challenge because, like as a young person starting out in the field, looking at all of these different uh, experiences that people are having in different ages, all of this stuff, it was quite hard for me. And early on, I used to very much focus on, what are the sort of counseling skills or techniques or models that I can bring into the room. And as much as I was doing those techniques and skills well, I wasn't really having a lot of progress with clients. And over time, what I learned is, at the end of the day, regardless of what I know or what I learned in school, the most important thing is, as human beings, we're relational human beings, right? Like it's a big part of who we are as people. We're hardwired for connection, and it's sort of like the aspect of life that takes away all of these um, other labels, like ages, genders, cultures, profession, all of these things. It takes all of that away, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. It's something that we can all relate on, like on this human level. And it's really nice to know, and over the years learn, that what people are really wanting is a sense of connection. And so over the years as a therapist, I learned more and more how to connect with people, how to be with people, really hear them and tune into their experiences. But as I did this, it required me to have a lot of self-awareness in order for me to get to this place where I could be, although it sounds very simple, it sounds like a simple thing to say, okay, yeah, just be human, just connect with people, just hear people. It's a very simple thing to say, but in reality, it's a very hard thing to do. And and it's actually very easy to hold on to all like the skills and techniques and our position of power, whatever else that we have in our life. It's easier to hold on to that, but it's harder to connect with someone else on a human level. And one of the things that I really needed to do was develop my awareness, being more self-aware. And that helped me get to this stage in my life. And both professionally and in my personal life, being able to connect with my wife and my kids. And with regard to the awareness, there are different levels of awareness that I find has been important in my progress with my clients and so forth. The first level I say that's important is like the sensations, the sensations we feel. Even right now, as I'm speaking to you, I can kind of feel a little bit of tightness in my chest. And and so that tightness, when I feel that tightness in my chest, on one level, it's scary to think that I'm feeling tight in my chest right now. And that can make someone even more anxious. But with awareness, when you learn to be okay with the sensation, rather than being more anxious for what we're feeling in terms of the sensation, the more we learn to be with it, the more we can actually tune into what's happening underneath. So one of the reasons my chest is tight right now is because underneath there's some worry, there's some fear. Of course, like I said earlier, with Jeremy, although I'm an experienced speaker, when it comes to speaking to a laptop, I'm not very experienced. I'm quite new to speaking to a laptop. And so there's some fear. I can't see human faces. I can't see people. And I can't see if someone is, actually leaning in and paying attention, or if, like someone is just maybe having this on mute and doing something else. And even if that is the case, it's okay. You can grab food or whatever. I'm totally okay with that. But the thing is, like, when you see human faces and you see people paying attention, leaning in, all of this stuff, like, that you're connecting with them on one level, and that tends to be reassuring. But when I don't see that, then of course there's some fear. And now beyond that, on a cognitive level, my thoughts can either be helpful or unhelpful. So let's say, for example, if I take the path where, okay, yes, I feel my chest is tight and I'm scared, and oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm going to screw this whole thing up. And Jeremy trusted me with this, and Driver Check trusted me with this. What's going to happen? And all of that, all of those sort of thoughts can potentially lead to unhelpful behaviors, right? Like whether, maybe I rush through this thing, or I butcher this up, or maybe I just call in sick, or whatever it is. Like it could come up in different behaviors. And so I just gave you a real life example, like a live scenario of what's happening right now. In the counseling room, I've experienced this many times, and especially when I see people in really high positions of power, or couples, for instance. I find that can be quite overwhelming because, like, all of that inner dialogue, my thoughts can be like, am I really going to be able to help these people? And so the sensations, the tightness of the chest, feeling worried, and the fear being there, and so forth and so forth, right? And the more I learned to become aware of it, the more it helped me be present. And being present is the key to human connection, right? Really being able to be with someone and really hear what's going on for them, and not be in your head, not be in your mind thinking about all of these other things. Just being able to be with someone is the most important thing. And with awareness, we can have that. We can have that in our work. We can have that in our home. Now, the problem with I shouldn't frame it as a problem. So the thing with awareness is, although awareness in itself can be a great tool, it can be a great intervention, it's how we use that awareness. So for instance, I could, like, as an example, a hammer as a tool, I could use it to nail something, or I could use it to break drywall, right? And so at the end of the day, it's how I use that tool. Now, when I showed you that example of me being aware of what's happening within myself in terms of my sensations, my emotions, all of that, uh, one path is this judgmental path, and that's this guy here. I really don't like looking at him. This is a part of me. He comes up every now and then. Earlier on in my life, he was much bigger, and the compassionate part of me was much smaller. I really like this guy. He's quite a nice guy. The judgmental part of me, it comes up, and the narrative about me at that time isn't helpful, and the path that it leads to in my mind, it actually takes me down a downward spiral. And so when it comes to awareness, it's really important to recognize that although you could be aware of what's happening to you in the moment, it's which lens you're looking through, right? That's going to matter. So if you come in with the awareness and then there's all of this judgment, that awareness isn't going to be helpful. In fact, it's going to start feeling like it's destructive. Whereas when you have the awareness and then you come in with the lens of compassion, it can be really helpful. And so even for me, as I do, whether it's presentations or in the session or whatever it is, when I'm feeling worried, one path that I could take is like, what's going on? Like, why would you be so worried? You shouldn't be worried. This person's paying you all of this money and you should be able to handle this. You went to school for this. Or the other part of me, could say, yeah, so you're worried, and that's okay. You're still going to be okay. Right now, the thing is, if the judgment is really heavy, it can make our life quite miserable. So like I said, with the awareness, let's say you're aware that at work, you're, in terms of your behaviors, for example, you're having maybe a hard time keeping up. Maybe you're procrastinating a lot, right? And then let's say you become aware that you're procrastinating a lot. And then with that awareness, you come in with all the judgment, then chances are it's going to make it worse for you, because at that point you're going to be probably saying, like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, I should be able to keep up with my work. I'm not keeping up with my work. And chances are, in terms of the emotions, it's probably going to make you feel more worried and more scared or paralyzed on an emotional level. And at home also, like when say things aren't going well and there's a lot of judgment, why am I not able to do certain things? All of these sort of questions that come up with the awareness when there's that judgment, it can make it really hard for you to not only help yourself, but hard for you to be really present with anyone else in your life. And so remember when I said we're relational beings and we're hardwired for connection? When I have moments, which I do, there are days, where I can be quite judgmental on myself. And when I have those days, my ability to connect really goes down. I become more irritable. I start to sort of disintegrate on the inside. Um, and and so it starts to show up in my life. And there are moments, even in a session where uh, it becomes hard for me to pay attention to people, because like all of this stuff that's happening underneath can make it really challenging. And sometimes, like when I'm in a session, it's sort of like, with me there's this judgmental part, and then the compassionate part. And sometimes, like I said, the judgmental part can be quite big, and And so I'll come into the room and I'll be like, what are you doing? You should be better at this. And some days the compassionate part is able to really help me out. Over the years, I've just learn to give more room to the compassionate part of me. And so over the years, the compassionate part of me, this guy, this wonderful looking guy, he has a lot more space in my mind. And so my immediate thought isn't what's wrong with me. My immediate thought is it's what's going on. How can I help myself? You know, what's going to help me in this situation? See, that's a voice of the compassionate part of me. Whereas the judgmental part would quickly come in and say, like, what's wrong with you, right? And so with awareness, like I said, the judgmental part, uh, it comes in with this question sometimes, you know, what's wrong with me? And the narrative around ourselves can start to form where, you know, whether it's at work or at home, like I'm not very good at what I do. And I don't know why I can't do what I'm doing, but I just know I'm not very good at what I do. Or, you know, at home, like I just don't seem to be able to understand how to talk to my husband or wife or kids or whatever else it is. Whereas the compassionate part, the narrative is different. You know, a lot of times the narrative comes from a place of compassion. As human beings, you know, we're able to say, okay, you know what? Sometimes it's really hard. And some days it can be worse than others. And especially at a time like this right now, when we're going through this pandemic, there's a lot of weight we're all carrying, you know, not just at work, but also at home. There are a lot of different hats that we're all wearing. You know, I know for myself, like, you know, yes, the psychotherapist, the coach, all of the stuff, but also I've had to become a teacher and more of a chef and you know, I run my own daycare now. And so there's so many things that I do, and just trying to keep up with the day-to-day weight can sometimes be really hard. You know, and when I come from a compassionate stance, it's not why can't I keep up with this? It's more like it's a lot, and I think it would be hard for anyone to keep up with this, right? And so at that point, my question becomes, what will be more helpful for me? What are the things that I can do that's going to help me reduce this load? Who are the people that I can reach out to? What are the things I can do to make my life easier? And when I take that stance, you know, I'm a lot happier. Like here, you know, yes, my hair doesn't come back, but this is the only picture I could find myself with the suit on, so I thought I would put this on here. But you could see, you know, like there's just more happiness, and I'm able to connect more to people in my life. You know, like make more time, and so even though I may not necessarily be keeping up with every part of my life, uh, you know, uh, there may be like the number of sessions that I can attend to on some days will go down because I need to attend to myself and I need to reduce my load. And maybe sometimes I'm delayed in getting back to emails, and maybe sometimes I I'm like stuff around the house doesn't get done or whatever it is, right? When I'm more compassionate and give myself some space, I I feel like the weight, I'm not adding to the weight, you know, because it's already heavy. I don't need to be adding to that emotional weight. And when I'm not adding to that emotional weight and I'm feeling like I'm willing to let some of this go, and I step back from this idea that I need to work hard, I think that's one of the things that's really helped me in my life. You know, this idea of you have to work hard, letting that go really helped. I really look at, you know, like how can I make life easier? You know, how can I work smart? Those are the sort of things that I look at. And when my load goes down, then I'm a lot happier, and it's like a part of me feels a lot of relief. And so when I'm feeling that, it's easier for me to really enjoy life and be with my family and do things that I enjoy. So when it comes to work, and whether we're talking about, I almost want to frame it as tasks, and it's not just at your paid employment, but also at home, the tasks that you have. I find when there's this judgment, it tends to lead to more quantity. Like, for instance, at work, you may be able to get more tasks completed. You complete, or you finish all the emails, you attend to all the emails, you do all the tasks, whatever tasks you have, you get them done. At home, like your chores, your responsibilities, all of the stuff, everything, all of those tasks are completed. So judgment, when we're judging ourselves, it's almost like it gives us that push to make sure we're on top of things. And so what tends to happen is there tends to be more quantity, because there's a part of us that's like, you have to get this done, you have to get this done, you have to get that done. Whereas compassion, at times the quantity isn't there. Like I said, certain things I may fall behind on. So the quantity isn't necessarily there to the same level, but compassion tends to bring about quality in my work. And so when I'm with a client, I know I'm that much more effective because I can really be present with them. I can really connect with them. When I'm talking to my wife, I know, I can be more present and really connect with her and my kids and so forth. So it really brings about a lot of quality in my life. And over the years, what I've had to learn to do is, recognize that it's not a marathon, it's a sprint. I actually really typed that in wrong. So let me say it right, even though I typed it wrong. So it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I'll say that again. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And learning that was really helpful for me, because like, when I'm trying to get more work done, more quantity, it's sort of like the mindset is, if I just get this one more task done at work, I'm going to be feeling at peace. If I just get this one more chore done at home, I'm going to be feeling at peace. But unfortunately, that peace never comes, because it's just like one task after another and another and another. And what I find is, when we get into that mindset, although the quantity may be high, the risk that you run into is, when you're sprinting, when you're approaching life in that sort of sprint mentality, what tends to happen is, the risk is you could potentially burn out. And I've seen that many times, right? It's like you get all of these tasks done, and then eventually you get to a point in your life where it's just like, you don't feel anything, you don't feel joy, it's almost like you start to feel apathetic. You don't connect with your own feelings. And then when you burn out, it's really hard, because at that point it's very hard to make sense of what's going on, because for many years you may have gotten so much work done, and then all of a sudden you start to feel like, you don't have energy, there isn't the emotional energy, there's a mental exhaustion, all of this stuff doesn't feel good, and we could start to feel even depressed at times. Whereas with compassion, that when you, going back to the awareness, when you are aware, but then you approach it with compassion, what tends to happen, like I said, is there's more quality. And so even though the tasks, you may not be able to check off as many of them from your to-do list, you're still going to be, like running in this marathon, and it's going to be a gradual, lifelong experience where you're going to be filling your own cup and still feeling good about life and still enjoying life, and the quality is going to be there. And in fact, sometimes, you're going to have these bursts of energy, where you may be able to get more quantity done at times. But again, you take a step back, and if it feels like a lot, you make sure that you attend to yourself first. Honestly, I wish I could change that sentence right now, but I'm going to let it go. Okay, so right now, with this pandemic, COVID-19, during these chaotic times, sometimes it will be too much, and that's okay. Just remind yourself you're only human. Like I think even beyond the pandemic, even before March of 2020, to be quite frank, I think the way that we live our life is not really sustainable. Like the society, the way we've structured life hasn't been sustainable. And I think that's part of the reason why mental health has been an issue, because, as a society, we've shifted away from this idea of I need to go to work so I can attend to my family's needs, to I need to be at work is like sort of like the main thing. And then family and like stuff at home is just almost like a secondary thing. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. Our standard of life has gone up, and sometimes, like, as much as there's a lot of value for capitalism, I think sometimes what capitalism tends to do is like kind of keep you spinning in this hamster wheel. And so although our quality of life, I should say, like, even though we say quality of life, we're referring to materialistic things, right? Like we have bigger homes or bigger cars or whatever else, but unfortunately we end up spending more time and more focus on work rather than home. And so I think that was existing even before the pandemic. And after the pandemic, that sort of amplified things, because all of a sudden we have that much more workload. Having said that, I think the pandemic is giving us an opportunity to actually reframe some of the ways that we've lived, and I see that in people. I see more people going out into nature because we can't go to restaurants as much as we would like to, or movie theaters or malls or whatever else. People are going out more into nature, and we're learning to connect with people in our life, our spouses and our kids and parents and friends. And even though it might not be in person, we're really learning to value these relationships. And so I think there's a possibility that we could really have this transformative experience from this. Having said that, it still doesn't mean it's going to be nice all the time. In fact, I think a lot of days it is going to feel like it's too much, because we're working from home and taking care of all the responsibilities at home and at work, juggling everything. It can be quite chaotic. But throughout all of this, remind yourself you're only human, and at times you might not be able to keep up with it, and that's okay. The important thing is you stay connected. You stay connected with important people in your life, your immediate family, at work, your colleagues, your manager, whoever else it is. Stay connected and let them in if it is becoming too much. And I would really hope people in positions of power, managers and whoever else, would really honor that and attend to the needs of their staff. And I would hope that they would reserve from judgment and try to support them with whatever resources that can be put in place. I'm just going to quickly take a look at time to make sure we're okay for time. Okay, so when it comes to attachment, I mentioned in the beginning, I'm going to be talking about self-awareness and attachment. And so the thing about attachment is the connection needs that we have. If we don't attend to our connection needs, what tends to happen is we don't feel safe and secure. all of us as human beings are hardwired for connection. And when we really do attend to those connection needs, then there's a sense of safety and security. Even though we may be worried about how we're going to get through certain experiences, like right now, like with the uncertainty of the pandemic, even though there's going to be anxiety around that, when we attend to these connection needs or attachment needs, there tends to be the sense of security that whatever happens, we can get through it, we can manage it. And I have three gauges that I tend to keep in the back of my mind that I find is very helpful. And so the three gauges, one is a gauge for relational distress, like a meter that goes up and down, and then a gauge for connection, and then a gauge for workload. What I find is when the workload is really high, our ability, and circumstantially too, our ability to connect tends to go down. And of course, because we have very little energy when the workload is high, we have very little time. So all of those things make it really hard. And so the connection meter tends to go down. When the connection meter goes down, what tends to happen is the relational distress goes up. So this is when you start to feel like every little thing becomes an issue. It could be with your boss, right, at work. Every little thing feels like it's an issue. And so in the work context, I think it's really important, especially for people, for managers and HR professionals and so forth, to really look at this workload meter. How much workload are your staff carrying? And if they're carrying a lot of workload, and if you as a manager or HR is carrying a lot of workload, chances are your ability to connect with people is going to go down. So if you think about it, as a manager or an HR person, rather than being, really in connection with your staff and understanding their needs and recognizing what's going on for them, if your workload is high and their staff's workload is high, both parties' connection ability is going to go down. And so then that's when the relational distress goes up. So every little thing at work tends to become an issue. You start to feel like there's just friction all around, and sometimes it can create this almost toxic culture. And same thing tends to happen at home. So if your workload is very high, and again, your paid employment and your work at home, like all the tasks that you're doing at home, if that's very high, then you're going to have very little time and energy to connect with your partner or parents or kids, whoever you're with. That connection is going to go down. And so when this connection is going down, then the relational distress goes up, right? So again, you start to have these arguments about which bin the garbage should be going in, and it starts to become almost explosive because underneath, you both haven't been feeling like those attachment needs have been met. So when they haven't been met, you start to feel insecure about the relationship. And what we want is to have a sense of security and safety, right? So when this happens in my household, so as an example, let's say with my son, there are moments where he's not listening to me, and say it starts to feel like every little thing is an argument. I take a step back and look at these meters and see how my workload has been over the week or two, right? And if my workload has been very high and I haven't really been connecting with him, I haven't really been spending that time, doing things that he enjoys, that I enjoy, then what tends to happen is he's not really wanting to hear me. He's not really wanting to listen to me. And there's this underlying anxiety and sense of insecurity in the relationship. And so what I try to do is at that point, I take a step back and try to attend to what really matters. So I will do whatever it takes to bring down that workload and find ways to foster a sense of connection. So even if we're arguing about something, or it seems like there's a lot of issues around chores or whatever else, I take a step back from that. Rather than engage in that power struggle, I'll take a step back and find ways to foster a sense of connection. And usually what tends to happen when that connection is going up, the relational distress goes down. So every little thing doesn't become an argument. In fact, there's more compliance. Like my son is a lot more willing to hear what I have to say and follow instructions. And, the same thing applies at work too. Like when we're with people, we can't really expect them to just listen to us or follow instructions. And most of us know that. So sometimes it's hard when there's all of these arguments or friction in the workplace. So I think it's really important there to take a step back and see what are the things that can be shifted in these gauges. How can we reduce the workload? How can we increase a sense of connection? Okay, so like I said, attend to that connection and make that time with your colleagues. Make sure that you're prioritizing that. And so when you're making that time with colleagues, you want it to be about more than just work. So if you have weekly meetings or whatever else, you want to really start from a place of, one, just really genuinely being curious and really caring about the other person, and having conversations that are not about work, just so that you can really connect with them. And just give me one moment. I'm going to move this down. Okay. And so when we attend to that connection, like I said earlier, it brings about a sense of safety. It allows us to take chances, to take risks, to explore, and it reduces that sense of anxiety. And so again, during these times, during the pandemic, none of us know how things are going to go, when things are going to change, when the vaccine's going to come out, when we're going to have a sense of normalcy again. But the important thing is to really have a feeling of security. It's more of a feeling of security. It doesn't have to be something on the outside. It doesn't have to be necessarily just a vaccine, because we don't have control over that. We don't have power over that. But if we can feel a sense of security, if we know that our manager or HR team really cares, if we know at home there's a sense of connection, it starts to feel like whatever the case, it will be manageable. We can get through this. It's going to be okay. So before we wrap up, I want to make sure I touch on some practical strategies to be able to foster a sense of connectedness at work. And going back to that quality or quantity, you want to really prioritize quality over quantity. In order for you to be able to foster a sense of connection at work, really prioritize quality over quantity. So, okay, so the quantity piece you can address in many different ways, but quality is very hard. See, quality is that human connection. Quantity are those tasks. And I really think it's actually easier to address the quantity piece. Some of the things that can be done in a workplace is to really take a step back and streamline those processes. One of the things I love about technology companies is they're always looking to create a frictionless system. Whether it's an app on the phone or Google Home or Android Auto, whatever it is, everything they're always improving these processes and streamlining them so that it becomes frictionless. And I think it's really important to do that in our workplace. You know, like any unnecessary tasks, I think they shouldn't be there. There should be a process in place to make that easier. And if you're in a position where you can delegate, you know, and have resources for staff so that they also can feel like they can delegate some of the work, I think that's another way to bring down that quantity. And wherever possible, leverage technology, make things easier. And we live in a world where technology is making a lot of these things very accessible. You know, like we look at cloud platforms, and pretty much every company is going into an age where they're going to have some sort of software on the cloud that's going to make things easier for their workplace. And so when you address a quantity and you reduce that, what you're doing is you're reducing the workload for your staff, for yourself. You're reducing the workload. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have more time and energy to increase the connection, right? So then at that point, you set up one-to-one time, make sure you have those meetings. And like I said, don't make it always about work. And in fact, I encourage you to, you know, however you do it creatively, have ways of, you know, connecting outside of work. Like I know some companies, they do like these Friday evenings or whatever. However you're doing it, it doesn't have to be just one day. It can be certain points in the week where you check in and talk about things that are a little bit outside of work. And if there are moments where, you know, a person in your workplace is having a hard time or they're going through a challenge, really hear and tune in to their experience. You know, those moments of vulnerability, when we create time for people and we're really present with people, they really feel cared for. And so I think that's super important. You know, again, it goes back to that quality. And when someone feels cared for, they know that the other person is there for them and that connection is high. It's the quality is there. They feel a sense of safety and security. And when someone is feeling that, then, like I said, the distress tends to go down. You know, they're a lot happier. They won't be as anxious because they know that they have that support, and whatever happens, someone has their back, right? Okay, time to check in for questions. I hope I haven't gotten, well, it's been pretty good for time. Okay.
Well, that was great, Harry. We did have some questions come in.
Sure.
So I'm just going to rapid fire them at you.
Awesome.
No pressure. No, I'm just joking. So, no, that was a great presentation, and I just love the way you present. It's a very calm demeanor, and you're articulate. And I think especially during times like now, people need that calming presence. So this is why we asked for you to participate. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
So first question is, and I really like this question actually. So after a long day of working, I want to be alone. I want to disconnect, but my partner who works from home wants to talk. Mm-hmm. How can I respect my boundaries, but also satisfy my partner's need for connection?
That's a great question. Okay, so the thing there is both of those are important. So your needs to disconnect because it's been a long day, and your partner's needs to connect, both of those are important. The thing is, you just want to look at which one you put first and how you convey this message. Now, although, you know, on the surface, if you put your own needs first, and then you put your partner's needs second, sometimes it may convey the message as though you don't care about their needs as much, but it doesn't have to look like that. As long as you put a framework around it, you have some parameters around it, and you convey and you communicate this message in a way that's helpful, chances are your partner is going to, in fact, feel like you are really trying. So what I would encourage is something like, a set time, that maybe 15 minutes or half an hour. And if you're working in an office place and you're coming home, then 15 minutes or half an hour, right after you're done work, do something that you really, really enjoy, that really resonates with you. Whether it's like getting your headsets on, you're listening to some music, you have a cup of coffee, you're taking a walk on a trail close to work, or whatever it is, do whatever you really enjoy for that period of time, and then come home. And then at that point, you would have filled your own cup. So then you'd be in a position to be able to give and connect and then tune into your partner's experience. And like I said, now it's about how you frame it and how you convey this message to your partner. If you convey it as, I do want to be able to be there for you, but sometimes I find it's really hard. I feel like I'm drained and I'm running on empty. So I'm just gonna, take this half an hour to do this, and then let's do something together. Then your partner is gonna really hear that and see that your intentions are good.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question is, so say in the moment when someone's experiencing an anxiety attack or a panic attack, what can someone do in that moment to try to get themselves out of it instead of let it go on for minutes, hours, days, weeks, right? Any help?
Right. Yes. Okay. So we'll pull this back into the awareness. So when someone is having a panic attack in the moment, and sorry, I just want to make sure, Jeremy, the question is about the panic attack, right?
You got it. So when you're in that moment when someone's suffering from that panic attack, or
Okay. Yes.
like, oh my God, my camera's not working and I'm trying to do a summit live.
Right.
What do do?
Okay. Yes. Okay. Great. Okay. So in the moment of panic, when you're aware of what's happening, so first thing, you want to have this observer part of you that you want to develop over time, right? A lot of times we're so in ourselves, like it's hard for us to like separate ourselves. So what you want to practice is like start to notice yourself almost from like the outside. And when you start to have this awareness in the moment, what you want to do is, like I said, and you might want to pay attention to this the next time it happens to you. See how you're responding to yourself. What's that voice saying? So if you're in a place of panic and then the voice is saying, oh my God, I'm so screwed, like I can't do this, like what's going to happen, then chances are like it's almost like you have panic on top of panic, like you have anxiety on top of anxiety. You start to become more scared that you're feeling anxious in the moment. Whereas when you have instead of that, like that's what I framed it as, like judgment. Instead of that judgment, if you have that compassion, what you can say to yourself is, okay, right now I can see that I'm in a state of panic. Like I can see that I'm experiencing, this high level of anxiety. Okay, so in that moment, because it can be very intense and the emotions can be very intense, you want to take a moment to ground yourself, right? And otherwise, it can feel like you have a really hard time trying to manage that anxiety. So the way you ground yourself is whether you're paying attention to your breathing, or maybe something sensory, like you have you're touching something, or you're hearing the sounds in the room, just for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Ground yourself, and then ask yourself, what's going to help me right now? Right? What's going to help me right now? That's an important question. And a funny thing, like I had that moment just before this presentation, because I was going to be logging in at 10:45 and my computer started acting up. And so I was starting to experience a bit of that panic. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to get onto this session? And so I took a moment, like I said, I attended to my breathing. I said, what's going to help me? Well, okay, maybe I might need to call Jeremy, right? So I had my phone ready, I had Jeremy's number. And then I restarted my computer and just waited to see. and ready to call Jeremy if I needed to. But little did I know that Jeremy was already in this presentation, so he probably wouldn't have taken my call.
Oh my God, he's not answering. What do I do now?
Okay, yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
And I deal with that a lot too. Like I suffer from anxiety myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm just feeling overwhelmed or anxious, I've really become in tune with myself. And it's through training sessions with yourself, Harry. Jonathan Korean presented earlier this week. And just a lot, and Mike Kishin has helped me as well. So all these different speakers that we've had, I've been able to take all these tips and tricks from different people and really tune into myself. So if I'm feeling anxious, there's usually two things that Jeremy needs to do. And that is, I need to go exercise. So whether it's going for that brisk walk through a nice trail, just to get in some fresh air, focus on my breathing, but really just burn off some energy that I have. Right. And the other thing is, when I'm feeling anxious, I feel like I'm not feeding my body the proper nutrients. I'm, drinking too much coffee, not eating enough, not eating regularly or at the scheduled time. So I think it's really like, when people really tune into what their cruxes are or what helps them spin out things,
right? Yes.
Where you can really start to adopt.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great example, Jeremy. Yeah, like you said with the coffee, for instance, it kind of amplifies the anxiety. And so with that awareness, you start to notice it. And then, like, say you're asking yourself, what's going to help me? You might even shift away from some of these things that, like whether it's coffee, you might shift away to maybe something that's like maybe tea or whatever else that's a little bit more calming. And when you talked about the energy, it's really about tuning into our individual selves and how we are. So in your case, like you pointed out, there's this high level of energy that you need to get out. And for some people, it might look different. For some people, they need to sit back and listen to music, close their eyes. For me, it's like, it's the opposite. Whereas the energy doesn't necessarily do that for me. It's more like when I kind of lay back and listen to music, I feel like I sort of get out of the space and time and really have this moment where I can really be present with that music that tends to really calm me down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I think we have time for one more question, if that's okay, Harry?
Yes, of course.
So this is more around the workplace. So I think this will be some helpful tips for advice for people. So would you have any suggestions for team building at work?
Team building. So are you asking about like activities?
Yes. So like, how can a workplace have some sort of team building exercise for the workplace? And I think this answer has probably changed dramatically when you've been asked it a year ago, because now there's also, like you've already talked about, here we are having a virtual meeting. It's tougher to engage, but we still want to stay connected with our colleagues, right?
Right.
So I think really when we look at it, it's like, how do we team build with our workmates?
Right. Yes.
During a pandemic.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? So when it comes to team building, I think, although like you could use sort of like surface level strategies, and I think they have their place too. For instance, like, doing group activities, like whether it's, you have a certain day where you're playing some games or something, or some places have like these Friday night drinks or whatever. All of those things are on the surface level helpful. There's some activities that can be helpful, but I think it's important to have that one-to-one connection. So when it comes to that team building, if there's an opportunity to almost have like smaller teams and have close connections, and I'm not sure how HR would go about that or management would go about that. But if there's a way to almost like start to pair people up, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be the same pair, but just kind of like have a structure where you have these smaller teams and people can connect on an individual level, like, just call and talk on the phone, or have those video meetings, and just time to be able to better understand the other person. And I think in terms of the management and HR, what you may need to do is almost like give a little bit of structure to that. So people, when they have these connection meetings, let's just say if you frame them as connection meetings, like what are the sort of things that you're gonna talk about just to get to know each other?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So,
yeah.
There was a couple other questions that we're not going to be able to get to today. Yeah. So, Harry, you and I can chat afterwards, and I promise I'll answer your phone call as long as it's not this week.
On the phone or whatever it is, just let me know, and I'm more than willing to answer those questions. And if anyone has any questions beyond that, even outside of this, feel free to reach out to me. I really do love to talk to people and connect with them. So you don't necessarily have to have even a session with me. We could just chat.
Yeah. No, really appreciate you participating. And so before we close off here, I want to make a note that we want people to tune back in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
We have another special guest appearance today. So this is Mike Hishin, who I've known for many years personally. He's a motivational speaker. He's an owner of a marketing promotional company, an entrepreneur, fitness guru. So we're going to have people come back at 12:15. I'm going to have like that fireside chat with them for about 30 minutes or so. Okay. So Harry, it was awesome to see you. Love seeing you present. And feel free to stick around if you want to catch Mike Hishin in 15 minutes. But if not, I'll be talking to you soon. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Yeah, take care.
And everyone else, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We'll be back in 15 minutes. I did this. Numbers isn't my thing. So. Okay, bye, guys.
Have a good one.